Part 70. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 691. The sky is getting dark, and the sea seems to have become quiet along with it. In the dark night, on this sea area, looking from a distance, there is only one lighthouse, flickering on and off, standing on the endless dark sea. Now on the open ground outside the lighthouse, Andrest and the others were sitting around a campfire, eating grilled fish and chatting with laughter. Lily had the fish in her mouth and chewed it with a happy expression, but she said, "It seems to be a little bit worse than what my father made." Uncle Panza's craftsmanship is beyond words. Andrest also nodded and said. Kurikas glared at the two guys with some disgust and said, "You are eating my fish, do you still want to say it doesn't taste good?" "Ha ha ha ha, old man, your skills are also very good." "Are you a doctor or a cook?" Ace said with a big smile. "If you live here alone, you will naturally know something about everything." Kulokas liked Ace very much and said with a smile. Ace looked around, then finally couldn't help it anymore and asked, "Old man, I heard that you used to follow the pirate king Roger." Kulokas nodded, and then said, "That's right, what's wrong?" He always felt that Ace looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. "I don't know if he is familiar, but this familiarity comes from Ace's bloodline. The fact that Roger got married and had children in the South China Sea is not all. Everyone in the 950 Roger pirates knew about it, at least Kurikas didn't know about it. Even Rayleigh didn't know much about it. I'm just a little curious, that's the Pirate King, how is he? Is it really as evil as the world says?" Ace asked, pretending to be nonchalant. He had joined the Warhammer Pirates for a while. However, he still kept silent about his life experience. The only thing Andrest and the others knew was that Ace was a card. Pu's grandson, the grandson of that naval hero. "I don't know the rest, and no one has asked." Kurikas smiled and asked, "Do you think that guy Orgrim is evil?" Ace thought for a while, and then said, "It's so, right, I don't have much contact with Mr. Chui, but judging from my current senses, I don't think there's anything particularly evil about Mr. Chui." "Yeah? But that guy Orgrim is known as the most evil pirate in history," Kurikas said softly. Ace was silent for a moment after hearing this. "The same goes for Roger. From the perspective of our companions, Roger is undoubtedly a good guy, but from the perspective of the world, he is indeed an out-and-out evil pirate. After so many years, I occasionally hear people mention him, even if they have never met him, they all gnash their teeth at him," Kurikas said softly again. "Yeah," Ace murmured. "Maybe you should know. After all, I think that guy Orgrim seems to know some inside information. Maybe he told you about Roger's death." Kurikas spoke again. My hawk's eyes changed slightly, but he didn't say anything and continued to eat the grilled fish quietly. There was a gleam in Ace's eyes. He didn't know whether others knew it, but what was certain was that he didn't know. "Roger, what's wrong?" Ace quickly asked. I found that Ace was particularly concerned about Roger's affairs, even in Bihai. Whenever there was a chance, he would inquire about it. Runty said suddenly. Ace didn't refute anything and said directly, "That's the Pirate King, the only Pirate King. I'm interested. Is it reasonable?" No one suspected anything. Andrest said with a smile, "I'm actually very curious, but my father didn't tell me much about this. He only said that if he wanted to know, he should go to the sea to find the answer, something like that." After joking for a while, Kurikas said, "They say Roger was caught by the Navy. In fact, that guy should have surrendered." "Surrender yourself?" Ace asked in surprise. "Yes, as the ship's doctor, Li Ji was already in serious health problems when I boarded the ship. The guy was terminally ill. After finding Raf Drew, our pirate group also disbanded. The reason was that Roger's health was already very poor, so his last choice should be to sacrifice himself to the times. He used my own life. Together with Orgrim, We started the era of great pirates, Kurikis said. It's because he's about to die soon, Ace said with some shock. In fact, Ace has always had many misunderstandings about Roger and his father. He knew that his birth also led to his mother's death. 20 months pregnant, he knew all about this kind of thing. In my heart, I blamed myself very much, but I complained more about Roger. Complaining that Roger chose to leave at that time, be caught by the Navy, or surrender. If he could wait a little longer and do these things after he was born, then his mother might not have died. He had this idea. But at this time, he also understood a little bit of the truth. It turned out that at that time, his father, Roger, was dying. This left him no choice. It should be true. Roger said that he had a woman he loved deeply in the South China Sea. I think if it weren't for his health, he wouldn't have surrendered so quickly. Kulokas nodded and said. Dearest, a woman, Ace thought in his heart. You should all know what happened next. Orgrim made a big fuss in Rogtown, started this chaotic era of great pirates with Roger, and gave Roger a decent death. Wasn't Hawk involved at the time? Kulokas said, looking at Mihawk. Mihawk nodded first, and then said softly. Orgrim said, no matter what, Roger is called the Pirate King. Since he is the Pirate King, he should die in the hands of the pirates. How could he be humiliated and killed by the Navy? So he was going to Rogtown to cause a scene. After a short pause, Mihawk continued later, I thought about it and felt that the influence of Boss Shiji might have been involved in Orgrim's case. Orgrim wants to help Boss Shiji fulfill his long-cherished wish. As soon as Mihawk finished speaking, Ace couldn't help but ask, then what kind of person do you think Roger is? Mihawk shook his head directly and said, Roger and I have almost no contact. If you ask me, I don't know. Kurikas didn't think much about it, smiled and said, interesting person, he is quite funny and has a good temper. He treats our friends on the boat like family, but he is also very scary when he is angry. The most important thing is that this guy may be suffering from a terminal illness and always feels like there is not enough time, so he is very anxious about everything he does. It seems that Kurikas has not talked about his past for a long time. To be honest, he had not had the chance to say this before. First of all, he guarded the lighthouse alone and had little contact with the outside world. Even if you have occasional contact with people, it's impossible for him to go up and say these things. Only when I met Andrest and his group could I talk about these things. After all, Andrest and the others are Orgrim's sons, so they are qualified to listen, and they will never betray him to the Navy. So at this time, we talked about the past after a long absence, and Kurikas also talked for a long time. Let Andrest, the new generation of pirates, gradually learn about the interesting stories of those big figures in the previous era. Later we learned that the guy Orgrim appeared in Edwall and saved the guy Shiki. Otherwise, Shiki would have been doomed in that naval battle, Kurikas said with a smile. Looking back on that time, he now finds it quite interesting, and the dangers inside have turned into jokes. I know, it was also from that time that Master Chui joined Boss Shiji's banner. Runti said quickly. After she finished speaking, she glanced at Mihawk again and said, is that so? Mihawk nodded and said, yes, we have joined Shiji's banner since then. After a slight pause, Mihawk said strangely, I'm still a little confused, why was Orgrim so sure that you would fight in Edwall? But no one bothered about this issue. Finally, Ace thought about it again and again, and couldn't help but ask then, what would happen if Roger had blood left in the world? He thought that asking this question would cause an uproar. The result was good, everyone around seemed calm. What will happen? Andres said, smacking his lips. I heard that back then, the world government executed many suspects in the South China Sea, Nami interjected. Therefore, the world government and the Navy are not good things. Even if Roger is the Pirate King, what sin does he have? But how can a child be guilty? Trafalgaro said without hesitation. That is, judging crimes based on blood is simply outrageous. Lily said the same thing. Kurikas's expression was a little confused and reminiscing. After a long time, he said, then Roger will be happy, right? After all, if he really has a child, he would be about the same age as you. Will he be happy? Is it really good for that child to come into this world? Ace murmured in a low tone. Who knows, but I think if there is such a child, he will not doubt it, Kulokas said softly. What do you suspect? Ace asked. I wonder if his coming to this world is a good thing, Kulokas said. After a slight pause, Clow 3.1 Cas continued, although I don't know if there is such a child, but if Roger really has blood left, then this child must be. He carried the love of Roger and his mother for him, experienced many risks, and escaped the brutal hunting of the world government, and finally survived. The fact that he was able to survive must have been protected by his mother at the risk of his life. This at least proved his mother's love for him. How could a person like this doubt whether it was good for him to be in this world? If you have doubts, wouldn't you be sorry for your mother? Kulokas said it unintentionally, but Ace was stunned. He had never thought about these issues from this perspective. But at this moment, Kulokas's words seemed to open a door for him. Normally, he knew how he survived. It was his mother who held him in her belly and stayed there for a full 20 months before he survived. Because of this, when he was born, his mother also exhausted all her strength and died. He died. He had thought about it a lot before, but now, he suddenly understood that pursuing the question of whether something should be born in this world was simply his biggest stupidity. So many years ago, his mother had already used her life, has told him the answer. He was protected by full love and came into this world. In this way, what else is there to doubt? Sure enough, the sea will give me the answer. Ace held back his tears and thought in his heart. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support the original works of Philo Novel Network, b.faloo.com. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 692. Fortunately, the night was getting dark, and the bonfire was swaying in the sea breeze. The light didn't hit Ace directly in the face. So no one seems to have noticed anything wrong with Ace. But Andrest, who was eating grilled fish, glanced at Ace inadvertently and noticed some traces of tears in the corners of his eyes. He was a little surprised, as if he had thought of something. But in the end, Andrest acted as if nothing had happened and didn't ask anything. He ate the fish quietly and listened to Kurikas chatting. After swallowing the fish meat in his mouth, Andrest suddenly interrupted the topic and asked, "My hawk master, why did you come here? It is calculated that we should almost enter the great world. We are on the way, so you came here to see us." Andrest's thought was quite beautiful. A feeling of deep master-disciple affection. However, my hawk was very inhumane and shook his head and said, "I never expected that I would meet you here." "Ha ha 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 ha, is this just being sentimental?" Runty laughed without hesitation. Yamato reached out and patted Runty on the head and said, "Save some face for our captain, right?" Andrest glared at Yamato with some embarrassment, and then asked, "Then master, what are you doing here?" "I originally wanted to go to the East China Sea," my hawk said softly. "What to do in the East China Sea?" Andrest asked a little strangely. "Are you going to my hometown to eat oranges?" Nami also asked with a smile. My hawk shook his head and then said, "Look for someone." As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a newspaper from his arms, pointed to a photo in the newspaper and said, "It's just a few of them." "When is the newspaper?" Andrest took the newspaper and glanced at the date, and then said with some surprise, "Yesterday's." My hawk nodded. Andrest lowered his head to read the newspaper, and then said with some surprise, "Munch, the name, why does it sound so familiar?" "The last name of the hero Garp," Nami said directly. "Ah, yes. Only then did Andrest react. After a slight pause, he laughed again and said, "Ha ha ha ha, that's really interesting. I don't know if the two are related or not." The information in the newspaper was the news that Monkey D. Luffy caused a scene in the East China Sea. However, my hawk pointed to the text on the corner and said, "I'm not looking for this guy, I'm looking for these two." Andrest looked down and said, "Roronoa and Kuina." "That's right," my hawk nodded. The information published here is exactly the information that Roronoa and Kuina seem to be entangled with Monkey D. Luffy. The two sides seem to be having a big fight at a certain naval base. But it didn't explain that they were working together, as if, are there any conflicts? But these were all trivial matters, and Andrest didn't care what happened, but asked, "Master, what are you doing with them?" "Bring back Avalon." My hawk is very crisp and clear. "Bringing back Avalon," Andrest said in surprise. "Well, it can be considered that I am planning to accept 2 more disciples," my hawk said calmly. This, Andrest felt a little strange. He had 2 more junior brothers and sisters for no reason? Before Andrest could think anything more, my hawk said again, "However, these are only one-sided words from Enel. That guy is not a swordsman. Although he has vision, he cannot really be convinced. I plan to make contact first. It seems that they have not left the East China Sea yet." At the same time, Ace seemed to have come back to his senses from his trance. Before he could speak, the newspaper arrived in Runty's hands. Runty reached out and pushed Ace and said, "You said before that you were the grandson of that naval hero Garp." The adopted grandson. Ace didn't hide it and said it directly. Seeing no wonder, I just said my last name and nodded pretendingly to Cheng Runty. Then Ace asked a little strangely, "Why did you suddenly talk about this matter?" Page Yvonne pointed at the newspaper in Runty's hand and said, "Because there is a guy named Menki on it." Ace was stunned for a moment, took the newspaper, took a look at it, and said with joy on his face, "It's my brother." "Your brother?" Yamato also looked at Ace with some surprise. Nami was even more shocked. "Is he really Garp's grandson?" "Well, it's unmistakable. Although I haven't seen him for 2 years, this guy is my younger brother. His name is Monkey D. Luffy." "Ha ha ha ha, this kid has indeed gone to sea." Ace laughed. "He belongs to Lieutenant General Garp?" Nami asked hesitantly. "Well, he is the grandson of the old man. We are brothers, but unlike me, he is the grandson of the old man," Ace said with a smile. "Doesn't that mean that he is the son of Durag from the Revolutionary Army?" Andrest also said with some surprise. "That's right, but it seems that Luffy has never met Mr. Drago." Ace touched his chin again and said. Kurikaz was also a little surprised at this time, and then he laughed and said, "That guy Garp is really, unexpectedly, he worked in the Navy for decades, and his son became the leader of the Revolutionary Army. One of his 2 grandsons joined the Warhammer Pirates, and the other also went to sea to become a pirate." "Ha ha 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 ha, he was probably going to be pissed off, right?" Sharp Andrest suddenly said. "What's so great? Although he is Ace's younger brother and Garp's grandson, he is just a newcomer, right?" Yamato smacked his lips and said. "If we meet in the future, do we need to show mercy?" Runty asked. Ace waved his hand without hesitation and said, "That's no need. We are already pirates. If he meets him, don't worry about my face, just teach him a lesson." "You, the older brother, incompetent," Nami said with a smile. "That kid wants to be the pirate king. How can I let him get his wish with me here?" "Maybe we will meet you in the future," Ace said with a smile. Only then did Andrest continue, "I mean, Lieutenant General Garp is really awesome." "What's so great?" Yamato asked. "You see, Vice Admiral Garp himself is still a hero in the Navy, and his son is the leader of revolutionaries. Now, Ace has joined our Warhammer Pirates, and this boy named Luffy is also independent. The portal is open, think about it, "What is this?" Andres said softly. Ace and others scratched their heads in confusion. But my hawk's eyes lit up and he laughed. Black, white, and gray, the three paths, he and the Menke family have been involved in them all, and they have done a good job in them. In other words, when Andres said this, his words were interrupted. It was Nami who spoke. Nami was also stunned at this time and couldn't help but said, in other words, in the next era in the future, no matter which camp is the protagonist, the Menke family, it seems like everyone can participate. Ace also reacted at this time. He didn't want to know, but he was shocked when he thought about it. It seems that this is really the case. I heard that Lieutenant General Garp was a carefree guy. Now that I think about it, the rumors may not be true. This naval hero may be very cunning. Andres touched his chin and smacked his lips. No matter who will win in the next era, the Garp family will not lose anyway, Yamato murmured softly. Amazing. Nami also sighed with emotion. Ace. Who are you talking about? Is this still the old man in my impression? After thinking about it, Ace still said. It could be a coincidence or a misunderstanding, right? Actually, my old man has always wanted Luffy and me to join the Navy. Hey, maybe he was just talking. Think about it, what did he do after he said it? Andres asked. Ace was stunned for a moment, and after thinking about it carefully, he found that it seemed, no. His old man was mumbling something about wanting both himself and Luffy to join the Navy. But he just kept talking back and forth. Do you really want to think about what he actually did? It seems there really isn't. Instead, they talked back and forth, which aroused his and Luffy's rebellious psychology. Let me just say, as a naval hero, how can it be so simple and awesome? Andres smacked his lips and said. Ace. Could it be, is my old man really a cunning person? Think about it carefully, how is this possible? Even though this seemed to be the case, Ace couldn't help but shake his head when he thought of Garp's image. But looking at the friends around him, they all talked about conspiracy theories and admired his old man very much. Ace wanted to laugh again. He did not interrupt these fantasies of his friends. Even thinking about it carefully, although it is impossible that the old man is arranging anything here. But if this is how it develops, it seems pretty good, right? Luffy, have you also gone to sea? Ace looked at the newspaper, listening to the arguments of his friends, and murmured softly. There was a smile on the corner of his, Zhao Hao's, mouth. He was looking forward to whether the two brothers could be together in the big city. Encounter at sea. But if we really meet him, I won't show mercy, Luffy Ace said with a slightly evil smile on his lips. 1. Peace is not something you can become if you want to. Although Ace thinks that he should also work hard towards this goal. But for now, I also discovered that my thoughts and psychology were changing. Suddenly, I felt, perhaps the only one who can bear the title of Pirate King in the sea is the King of Night sitting in Avalon, right? Even though it was his own younger brother, Ace compared it to the stupid Luffy, and then compared it to Orgrim who was sitting high on the throne. He really couldn't find the slightest bit of Luffy's advantage. Ha 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 ha, maybe after he realizes the reality on the sea, he won't talk about becoming the Pirate King anymore, Ace said with a big smile. The Pirate King will only belong to Lord Hammer. Runty suddenly said. Her eyes were very serious. But before Ace could speak, Andres reached out and knocked Runty on the head, and said, you are now my crew member and friends, can't we say that the Pirate King must belong to Andres? You're not good enough, Runty rubbed her head and said unceremoniously. Ha 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 ha, everyone laughed again. Filu reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support the original works of Filu Novel Network, b.faloo.com. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 693. After dawn, Andrest and his party began to board the ship. Do you really want to leave today? Are you done? Andrest leaned on a wooden pile on the dock, biting a toothpick in his mouth, and asked in a frivolous tone. Opposite him, stood Trafalgar Law. It's time to go. Everyone has been delayed for so many days because of me. I also got Mr. Kurika's notes, Trafalgaro smiled. There's nothing to stay here at the lighthouse on Upside Down Mountain. A twin cape, a person, a tower, and a stubborn whale. There's really nothing to linger about. If it weren't for Trafalgar Law's academic problems, Andrest and the others would have arrived on the first day and would have left on the second day. No matter what the delay is, we are all companions in the same boat. I think everyone is very happy these days. If I hadn't stayed here for a few days, I wouldn't have met Master Mihawk. Andreas smiled. Mihawk, if one person is full, the whole family will not be hungry. Andrest and the others are here to prepare to board the ship and bring supplies. The number one swordsman didn't have to worry about this. He just got some dry food, cheated a bottle of wine from Kurika's, and left at dawn. After looking at the sea in the distance and then at the lonely lighthouse, Andrest suddenly smiled. What's wrong? Trafalgaro asked. I was just thinking about how boring it must be to be in a lonely place like this, a place where birds don't poop, with a person, a tower, and a whale, Andrest said with a smile. Trafalgaro looked at Andrest a little strangely, and then said, as far as I know, you are not the kind of hypocritical and sad spring. Autumn people. Yes, Andrest murmured softly, and then said, but I know it's boring here, why, a little bit reluctant to give up. Trafalgaro looked at Andrest, but did not speak. Andrest did not pay attention to this, and the two of them stood quietly on the pier. I don't know how long it took. A head popped out of the boat. It was the navigator Nami. Hey, you two, why are you standing down there blowing? Come up quickly, where are you going next? Without you as captain, we would not dare to sail the ship randomly, Nami called. Andrest waved his hand at Nami, but without speaking, he spit out the toothpick in his mouth, shook the cloak on his body, and walked towards the ladder of the ship very coolly. Trafalgaro also walked up. Perhaps, it's because this is the real departure, or maybe, you know, this is a boring place, but it brings together people from all over the world. One day, there will be many interesting people and interesting stories here, Trafalgaro said suddenly. Andrest, who was walking in front, paused slightly. Instead of answering the question, he asked, have you ever regretted going to sea with me? A smile appeared on the corner of Trafalgaro's lips, and he said softly, Captain, where will we go next? Ha 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 ha, Andrest laughed, and then said, go to the sea. Even if he just walked out of the insignificant North Sea. But Andrest seemed to feel that he had grown a lot. Upside Down Mountain, Reeves Mountain, Twin Capes, Lighthouse, here will be the beginning of a new adventure. From here on, I will step onto the world stage. Heroes, old and new, will set off a new craze on this stage and in this era. He was confused, even a little uneasy. Yes, even though he is the son of the strongest man in the world, the more this happens, the more uneasy he becomes. But I'm the captain, Andrest muttered to himself, and the uneasiness in his heart dissipated a lot. Navigating alone is scary and lonely. Andrest admires his master Miho very much for this matter. Graham. But the voyage of a group of people must be interesting and exciting. His boat, Andrest, is carrying a group of interesting people. The sea must also be extremely exciting. Suddenly, he seemed I understand something again. Master Mihawk is not alone, because no matter where he goes, his heart may finally have a place to rest. Avalon in the Sea of Eternal Night. There are more than just Master Mihawk is also the destination for all of them. The ship carrying Andrest and others finally set sail to ride the wind and waves. Kurikas, still holding the harpoon and newspaper, kept watch. Walking to this isolated island, accompanying the stubborn whale. Mihawk used a small sampan to head to the East China Sea. No one was going to discuss Garp's grandson anymore. Maybe that guy was interesting, but now, too, it's just an inconspicuous little character. Golden City. The name of the world's #1 entertainment city is really getting louder and louder. At the beginning, although everyone was willing to pay compliments, they did not dare to tear down Orgrim and the world government. However, many people still feel that it is not taken seriously. The world's #1 entertainment city sounds very exaggerated, right? But now, anyone who has played in the Golden City has to sincerely a sincere compliment. This is a really good place. As a neutral zone, Golden City has actually attracted many refugees since its opening. Those refugees who have offended many big bosses but are extremely wealthy, they can get full protection here, and even live a very comfortable life. The only thing that makes them a little worried is that Bailey in their hands is like running water, flowing out. This is a real salesperson. Golden Cave. The Black Pearl building is the only dark-colored building in the entire Golden City. Everyone who comes to the Golden City knows that anyone can be messed with here, but if you mess with the people who come out of this building, you will not die even if you mess with them. In the Golden City, he will definitely be kicked out. That is a blessing and a curse. Because this is the station of the Warhammer pirates in the Golden City. The automatic sensor transparent glass door slowly opened, and then the two figures of Nero and Lucci walked out of the building. Both Nero and Lucci are good looking, but if we really want to be more serious, Lucci's appearance is better. But in terms of temperament, Lucci's eldest brother Enilu has a better temperament. Both of them are wearing crisp suits today and look very cool and handsome. It seems like there is something important, but in fact, it is not. Today, the two of them are just here for a vacation, at least today. Yes, the Golden City has become the preferred vacation destination for members of the Warhammer Pirates since its opening. Anaru seems to be very unaccustomed to wearing such formal clothes. Walking out behind the gate, he stretched out his hand to untie the collar on his neck and said at the same time, "How many times have you been to Golden City?" Lucci's eyes were flying around at this time. In front of the Black Pearl building, there would always be beauties passing by. Maybe they were not just hanging out, but deliberately waiting for some encounters, right? After all, they can start from here. The people who come out of the building are definitely all important people. What? You said they might be the service staff in the building? That doesn't exist. These people have to go through the employee passage. Those who can come out from the main entrance can't do it. They are individuals. Lucky and Enilu, they are handsome, coolly dressed, and well-known pirates. Standing together, they naturally attracted the attention of many beauties. Lucky was scanning these beauties at this time. Even though Lucci usually talks to the leaders of the Warhammer pirates, he always seems a little childish. It sounds like he is a child who has not grown up. But in fact, Lucci only works in Ogre. This is the case in front of people close to him such as Mew. This is the case in front of his good big brother Eniro. You know, he is now 27 years old. How could he really be so naive? It was just the environment in the past. As a result, he grew up there, and everyone watched him grow up step by step. In front of those people, it seemed that he would never grow up. That's all. Listening to Enilu's inquiry, Lucci he put away his scanning gaze. Alas, there is no such thing as a beautiful woman. Lucci touched his chin. At this time, there was already some beard on his chin. After thinking about it for a while, Lucci said only 3 or 2 times, "Right." Enilu nodded, and then asked a little funny, looking at your posture just now, you have to put it here. Let's play? Lu. Chi's face turned red and he said with some embarrassment, "What are you talking about? I just keep myself clean." Enelu didn't listen to Luchi's quibbles here, and asked, "You come here a lot, do you know where there is anything interesting?" Luchi saw that Enelu didn't listen to his quibbles, so he gave up. After thinking for a while, he said, "It depends on what you are interested in. If you like gambling, just go to the casino. That bastard witch from the Sphinx especially likes it there." "I don't really like going to this kind of place." Enelu thought for a moment and said, "Flower Street? It's a good place to drink there. There's our Happy Street, and you don't have to pay for it after drinking." Luchi suddenly became excited and said, "Luchi, you still said that you keep yourself clean." Enelu caught something at once and said, "Funny." Luchi was stunned for a moment and said, "Dissatisfied brother Enelu, are you trying to trick me?" "Ha ha ha ha," Enelu laughed. At this moment, a crisp and sexy voice came from behind the two of them. "You two, if you are not familiar with this place, why don't you let me be your team leader?" A beautiful woman with long burgundy wavy hair said to Enelu and Luchi with a smile. Luchi thought it was some kind of flowers and plants, so he turned around and was about to refuse. But as soon as he turned around, he recognized the person. When he came, he said with a smile on his face, "Baccara, why are you here?" "Mr. Tetsalo said that distinguished guests are coming and he wants me to entertain them," Baccara said with a smile. "Yes, this is Baccara, who is the boss of the Golden City Casino, the invincible player in the gambling world, and is nicknamed the Lady of Luck. I heard that the Sphinx did not believe in evil, and followed Baccara, played 100 games and never won a single one." She almost cried in anger. Orgrim also met her when the Golden City opened. Even at that time, Baccara still had some unreasonable thoughts about Orgrim. But maybe it was because she was despised by Queen Stacy, or maybe Orgrim never responded to her. After all, this beauty is a cotter under Tizalo. If Orgrim really does something random, it will not only disrespect Tizalo, but also interfere with the normal operation of the Golden City. There are so many beauties around him, and there is no shortage of Baccara among them. And Baccara, how should I put it, is just an unknown longing for Orgrim. Not interested in meeting her idol, she quickly gave up. Enelu happened to turn his head and glanced, and then he was stunned for a moment. Huh? Is this a heart-pounding feeling? Instinctively, he held down Luchi, who was about to speak. A gentle gentleman's smile appeared on Anilu's face and he said, "Then I'll trouble Miss Baccara." "You're welcome, Mr. Enero," Baccara said with a smile. _Falu reminds you, 3 things about reading: hide, recommend, and share. Support the original works of Falu Novel Network, b.faloo.com. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 694. The sky gradually darkened, and Luchi and Enelu walked into the room of the Black Pearl building slightly drunk. Just as Orgrim said at the beginning, the room on the top floor was given to the Sphinx. But in fact, most of the qualified cotters who come here spend the night here. Here is where everyone will stay. Of course, there are enough rooms in the house. Everyone has chosen a room secretly and will not just go in and sleep around. After Baccara took them to play, she didn't send anyone in. In fact, she was a little drunk. As a subordinate of Tizalo, in terms of status, she is far inferior to Enero, Luchi and others. But fortunately, the officers of the Warhammer Pirates are still measured people. So even though Baccara often entertained these big guys, she never encountered any difficulties. In fact, she personally likes to participate in this kind of thing, and therefore, her weight under Tetsalo has become heavier and heavier. Maybe one day, she can naturally become a member of the Warhammer Pirates? Although Enelu was a little moved when she first saw Baccara. But after all, he was not a bastard who insisted on getting Baccara drunk and something happened. Perhaps professionally speaking, he is evil, but as a man, None of the men in the Warhammer Pirates would disdain to use such methods. It's not like everyone is lacking these. If you want to have fun, there are plenty of girls in Happy Street, why do you need to do such a price reduction thing? Sitting on the sofa, Anilu poured himself and Lucci a cup of tea to wake up. It should arrive tomorrow, right? Dover's little brother, and the guy from the Whitebeard Pirates, Lucci suddenly asked. Anilu handed over the teacup, and Lucci didn't show any politeness to his good brother. He took it directly and started drinking. We should be arriving soon, but there are a lot of things happening at sea, so it's normal for us to be delayed. If we don't arrive, we'll have 2 more days to play. Anyway, this time we're nominally here for a vacation, Anilu said with a smile. That's true, Lucci smacked his lips. Anilu's mind was obviously not on this matter. He stared at the tea leaves in the cup for a long time. Suddenly, this guy opened his mouth and asked Lucci, tell me, what should I do? Make girls unable to resist. Lucci didn't know whether he drank too much or had a brain problem. The moment he heard these words, his mind immediately thought of the Sphinx that he hated most. Therefore, he did not take Anilu's words into account. After going through it carefully in my mind, I said directly, it depends on whether it is great or not. What's not great? Anilu asked a little strangely. It's the kind of strength that can't be beaten, Lucci said again. Anilu. Is this how you grade girls? Anilu thought about Baccarat. He knew that Baccarat was good, but more of them were the super powerful ones who were. Mr. Hammer has praised his ability to bring luck to the fruit. But as long as he understands this, if he really takes action, Anilu feels that he can kill Baccarat in an instant. So after thinking about it, he said, I can beat him. What about? That's simple. If you want to make her unable to resist, generally speaking, you can do an uppercut and hit her on the chin, and then use a double blow to stab her head. If she doesn't lose her resistance at this time, she will definitely react instinctively. She resisted, seized the opportunity, kneed her in the stomach, used both hands to twist her head, and threw her backwards. In this case, she would definitely have no resistance, Lucci said quickly. He even made a few gestures with his hands as he spoke, thinking that if he had the chance, he would do this to the Sphinx so that she would know how powerful he was. Avenge all the grudges I had when I was a kid. He was so excited when he said it, and everyone on the Enel Road side was dumbfounded. Am I really talking to you about this? If I have the time, wouldn't it be enough if I go up to 200 million volts? However, looking at Lucci's ha-ha-he gestures, Anilu opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he couldn't. I'm so stupid, really. Why should I discuss these things with this idiot? But at the same time, Anilu was also thinking that he would contact Sphinx when he got the chance and ask her to be careful about Lucci's union set symbol Shuangfengiger and Huuhei. This guy, ever since I was little, I have been so irritable after thinking about it. It seems that Sphinx is learning kendo from someone recently. If Lucci dares to torment Sphinx in this way, he might be torn into pieces. Forget it, let's not get involved in this grudge. How about it? What I said makes sense, right? Brother Enel? Lucci put away his moves and asked with a somewhat expectant expression. Anilu glanced at him, then nodded seriously and said, listening to your words is worth 10 years of reading. I never thought we, the Warhammer Pirates, could have such a crouching dragon and phoenix chick like you. Who is Wolong Fengxiao? Lucci asked in surprise. I don't know. I heard Mr. Chui mention it casually before. It seemed to describe a person who is very smart. Anilu smiled and said. Ha 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 ha, that really suits me. Lucci laughed. Anilu nodded and said seriously, you must keep your innocent heart. Don't worry, brother Enel, Lucci patted his chest and said. Feeling that there was no need to continue discussing this kind of issue with Lucci, a guy with a bad mind, Anilu picked up the teacup and said, I'm going to rest. Well, I'm ready to rest too. Speaking of which, we two brothers haven't been together for a long time, Lucci also said. But before he finished speaking, Enilu's expression changed and he said, "No, no, everyone sleeps in his own place, everyone sleeps in his own place." As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and walked to the room next to him, closing the door directly. "Why do everyone sleep separately? I mean, we don't perform missions like this together anymore." Lucci scratched his head and muttered in confusion. At noon the next day, the sun was blazing. In order to cool down, the Golden City also turned on a grand fountain, bringing some coolness and moisture to the hot air. He didn't directly flirt with baccarat or anything. In fact, Enel is a very reserved person in this regard. He has many ideas, but when he really wants to let go and do it, he can't let go. He didn't care about the girl from Happy Street, but baccarat had status no matter what. So Anilu thought, when he returns to Avalon, he should ask Master Zui to see if he can give some guidance and experience. After all, judging from the situation around Mr. Chui, he is undoubtedly a powerful love expert. This trip to the Golden City seemed like a very leisurely vacation for the two leaders of the Warhammer Pirates. In fact, after returning from vacation, both Enel and Lucci had some things to do, which was to meet Doflamingo's Navy boy and meet Teach from the Whitebeard Pirates. According to Mr. Chui's wishes, each of us should get familiar with each other first. While eating lunch, Lucci asked, "Is there any news?" "Well, I heard that a ship flying the flag of the Sky Dragon's Hoof, escorted by warships, is approaching," Enilu said. "Do you need to go and greet me?" Lucci asked again. "It's not necessary. I had already made arrangements in the morning. Miss Baccarat would help us set up a connection, so it would be more hidden." Enilu smiled and said, "In fact, there is no need to ask Baccarat to handle such a small matter. Just find a little brother and arrange it." But Enilu still went to Baccarat, and he didn't know. "What do you think? In short, I feel that there is nothing wrong with meeting more people, right?" Lucci didn't ask any questions when he saw this. He is just such a person. If he goes on a mission alone, or brings new people, he can get into the mood quickly, consider all aspects, arrange things thoughtfully, and do things without leakage. But if there are people like Enilu or Neiman who can rely on him, Lucci will completely let himself go. To think about this, in his opinion, in this case, all he needs to do is obey and do what he is told. He will do whatever the big brother and big sister ask him to do, and he will chop whoever they ask him to chop. It's that simple. Ah, by the way, Brother Eniro, I thought about it again last night. In fact, you don't have to go to such trouble," Lucci suddenly said. Enilu looked at Lucci with some doubts. "What's the trouble? What are you talking about?" Enilu asked strangely. "What I mean is, you don't need to do anything like the twin winds piercing the ears, you can just use the ability of the thunder fruit." Lucibabala talked for a long time. Enilu's face froze slightly. After a long time, after Lucibala finished, he said seriously, "Oh." At the same time, at the port, a luxurious ship with the mark of the Tianxiang Dragon's Hoof was moored. "Come in." There is no doubt that those who dare to hang the standard on the ship are all Tianlong people's vehicles. Sure enough, not long after the ship stopped, a group of celestial dragons rode slaves and got off the ship without fear of falling. The Golden City is a neutral zone jointly developed by the world government and the Warhammer Pirates, and there are quite a few celestial dragons here. Especially when the Shampoo Islands in the back garden are becoming more and more chaotic, many celestial dragon men don't want to hang around there anymore, so they come to the Golden City. Therefore, although the reception at the port was very good, no one showed any surprise. Soon, these Tianlong people left here with great arrogance. However, they also know very well that in this place, they cannot cause trouble casually, otherwise, even if they are Tianlong people, they may not be able to get good results. There were a few celestial dragons who acted arrogantly here before. After that, everything seemed to be fine. But when they returned to Marijoya, they were severely beaten by the society. The 5 highest-ranking Tianlong people dealt with them miserably. Then, he never came to the Golden City to be arrogant again. After the Tianlong people left, a group of Marines came down from the warships following them. The person leading the charge is none other than Onizu Furgo, the current hawkish rookie at the Navy headquarters. After Furgo joined the Eagle Navy, he gave Sakaski some prestige. In addition, Furgo was thoughtful and good at getting things done, and he also had a good reputation. He is also becoming more and more valued by Sakaski. Even though Sakaski is keeping quiet, in fact he has been exerting his strength. There was only so much support from the Navy headquarters, and he knew very well that Marshal Sengoku was able to keep an even balance on other matters, so Sakaski would not be treated badly. But regarding the Marshal's matter, he really doesn't have much support within the Navy. Sakaski didn't know that Jun had already cleared all the upper routes because of Orgrim's incident. Therefore, he didn't think much about it. He just felt that the Navy was not strong enough and he could just walk away from it. This time, some Tianlong people are going to the Golden City, and the Navy will definitely provide protection. In the past, Sakarsky didn't bother to care about this kind of thing. Of course, as long as nothing happened to the Tianlong people, the general didn't need to care about it either. Otherwise, how could there be only 3 Navy admirals taking care of so many Tianlong people? Therefore, originally these things were all left to the various lieutenant generals of the headquarters, which can be regarded as a kind of accumulation of merit and qualifications. In the past, the hawkish Navy didn't like to deal with these things. This time, Sakaski pushed Furgo hard and asked him to take over the job. After things changed, Orgrim received the news and thought it was time for Teach to feel relieved. He might not really believe what he said about the Navy. As the protector of the celestial dragons, Furgo must be a highly regarded vice admiral on the surface. If he can come forward, Tikai can be stabilized to some extent. Hence, what happened this time? Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support the original works of Follow Novel Network, b.faloo.com. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 695. Virgo is also the first time to come to the Golden City. He is also quite curious and looking forward to the Golden City. Holding the bamboo in both hands and holding it behind his back, wearing sunglasses, he took a look at the luxurious city that was spraying water. What a great place, Virgo murmured softly. Then, he withdrew his gaze and looked around. The port was also very busy, with many ships coming in and out. The subordinates behind him were all looking at the world's top entertainment city with obsessed eyes. Looking at this scene, Virgo smiled, waved his hands and said, I don't know how long the heavenly dragons will play here. How we brought people here is how we brought them back, but here we are. Now that we are here, it's time for everyone to relax. According to the duty schedule, take turns to watch the ship. The rest of the people will be dismissed on the spot and go and have fun. As soon as Furgo finished speaking, the Marines behind him all cheered. Long live the Lieutenant General! Lord Furgo is amazing. Furgo smiled gently again and said, but the Golden City is no better than other places. Even if the Tianlong people come, they must abide by the rules here. The same goes for you. Don't toy with those fancy things and be honest. Play, what happened? Don't blame me for being unkind. Understand, Lieutenant General, we will never cause you any trouble, a group of Navy officers quickly assured that. Well, I'm going to go around the island too, so you don't have to follow me. Furgo nodded again. Or is it that Furgo has a good reputation in the Navy? It's because this guy, no matter how he pretends to be, treats his subordinates really well. In the Navy there have been a lot of changes in personnel. The General Navy, following this Lieutenant General today, may go to work on the ships of other Lieutenant Generals tomorrow. Over time, Virgo's good reputation will naturally spread. If it were replaced by S.A. Kasky and the rest of the hawkish naval admirals are here, let alone letting their men go to the Golden City to play 167, they might cause something, and they might even pull out their men and kill them. The Navy left some people on duty, and the rest were disbanded on the spot. Virgo said he wanted to go around the island, and the rest of the Navy followed suit. After all, if you follow your boss at a time like this, your boss won't be happy and you won't be happy either, so why bother? So soon, Virgo wandered into the Golden City. There are a lot of people in the streets and alleys here, and most of them are wealthy people with strong aura of wealth. They are all in groups, surrounded by beautiful women. On the contrary, it is a bit strange for people like Virgo to be alone. But there were so many strange people here, and it was such a lively and glamorous place, that no one cared about him or paid attention to him. Standing at the door of a store, Virgo stopped and looked at the products in the transparent display window. It's sunglasses. As a lieutenant general in the Navy, he has good benefits and a lot of salary. Doflamingo also left him the dividends from the top cotters of the Don Quixote family. However, since he works in the headquarters, Virgo will not accept those dividends. After all, the anti-corruption of this headquarters is not as good as that of various branches. Some of those branches are rotten to the core. This department is still very powerful. If you hold a large amount of assets from unknown sources, doesn't that make it clear that you have a problem? What a luxury. Virgo looked at the price tag under the sunglasses and chuckled. Just a pair of sunglasses costs more than 20 million belly, which is much more expensive than ordinary famous swords. I really don't understand the lives of these rich people. Although Virgo is not as rich as the rest of the Don Quixote family, he can still afford it. But after thinking about it, he shook his head and turned around to leave. At this moment, a beautiful woman with burgundy wavy hair lit up a lady's cigarette in her hand, leaned against the wall not far away, glanced at Virgo and said, "This handsome Vice Admiral, are you interested in treating me to a meal?" There is no doubt that this is baccarat. Although she said it frivolously, baccarat actually had no interest in Virgo, and she didn't know Virgo's true identity. However, even though Annalou had given orders, she still had to do it with all her heart. She just thought that the seemingly upright vice admiral was just a corrupted navy. There was still a gentle smile on Virgo's face, and he nodded and said, "It is my honor to invite a beauty like you to dinner. As an undercover agent, he definitely knows more information than baccarat. Of course, I also know who Baccarat is, the famous goddess of luck in the Golden City, and the right-hand man of Mr. Tetzalo, the young master's good friend. The coincidence of appearing here to chat with him must be related to that incident." So Virgo agreed without hesitation. Baccarat heard the news, waved to Tetzalo, and then took Tetzalo into a high-end restaurant. This is a restaurant owned by the Avalon Dark Group, called Leng Jade, and its business is very good in the Golden City. Many wealthy people are coming to eat, so they probably have to make reservations. But just like the top venues around the world, every venue with enough quality will always have some private rooms that do not accept reservations. These boxes are reserved for real VIPs. Even though Bacala is not a big shot in the Warhammer Pirates, she is the real boss in the Golden City. When you enter the restaurant, you don't even need to ask for a reservation, just swipe your face. We took Virgo all the way to the top floor of the restaurant, where there was a private room at the deepest level. After opening the door, Baccarat walked in, and Virgo followed without hesitation. As soon as I entered, I saw a very rude guy sitting on the sofa in the private room, holding a very expensive-looking menu in his hand, chewing a cigar in his mouth, and flipping through the menu randomly. Even though he had never met him before, as an excellent undercover agent and a just vice admiral, Virgo recognized this guy at a glance. The bastard who has stirred up a lot of trouble at sea recently is Marshal ID Teach, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Virgo only knew that he was here to meet someone, but he didn't know what the real plan was, so he was a little surprised after seeing Teach. He originally thought that this should be an internal matter within the Warhammer Pirates, such as setting up a trap to kill Sakaski, and breaking an arm of the 3 Navy generals before starting the war. Unexpectedly, the Whitebeard Pirates seemed to be involved. Although he was surprised in his heart, Virgo didn't show anything and his expression remained very calm. This guy Teach came earlier than Virgo, and was also guided in by Baccarat. When Baccarat went to find Virgo, this guy was flipping through the menu here, and he was very caring. But he didn't dare to mess with the dishes on it. Not because of anything else, mainly because it's too expensive. After all, he is from the top pirate group, but to be honest, he has never seen a dish of this level before. Damn it, the people in the Warhammer Pirates and our Whitebeard Pirates are both top pirate groups, how come they live so comfortably, Teach thought, cursing in his heart. The plate of sashimi on top cost an extra 2 million Baileys. Looking at the picture, Teach felt that the portion was just enough for him to take one bite. What's even more outrageous is that this is just an appetizer. The more powerful dishes cost 20 to 30 million per plate. Damn it, if you take 2 bites, it's like eating up a big pirate's bounty. Too much. In fact, don't think it's such an exaggeration, but in fact, this is what the top restaurants in the world do, whether it is this world or Orgrim's previous life. It is not uncommon to eat hundreds of millions in one meal. This is just food. If you include wine, let alone wine. Some wines are completely priceless and have no market price. They are priced at 100, 200 million Baileys, or even billions of Baileys. Even if you want to buy them, you can't even buy them. The gap in the heart is often widened in this way, and Tikai was shaken again at this time. If he gets the dark fruit, can he really do better than Orgrim? The Whitebeard Pirates are really no match for the Warhammer Pirates. I haven't been exposed to it before, and I haven't felt much about it. Now that I've been exposed to it, it's really uncomfortable. As the top pirate group, the Whitebeard Pirates are really a gathering place for bitterness. Time returned to the present. Just when Tikai was thinking about this, the door was opened, and then, the beautiful woman brought in before came back, followed by a Navy man. It seems that Orgrim really didn't lie to me. He really arranged a backup at the Navy headquarters, and he is also a Vice Admiral of the Navy, Teach thought with some emotion in his heart. The more Orgrim showed him inadvertently, the more awe he felt toward Orgrim rose in his heart. Speaking of which, Teach is a person who worships power and the strong. He had admired Newgate very much before, thinking that since his father was the strongest man in the world, he should be the strongest pirate. And now, he worships Orgrim again. Yes, worship. But unlike Newgate, while Teach admired Newgate, he also wanted to defeat Newgate and do better than him. Previously, he also had this idea about Orgrim. But now, he doubted himself. How virtuous and capable are you? Defeat Orgrim. While thinking about this, Teach suddenly recognized the Vice Admiral. Virgo, Teach was surprised. It's not because he has met Virgo, but because Virgo is a veteran who has been in the Navy for more than 10 or 20 years. Will this kind of Navy fall casually? Maybe it will, but would this kind of degenerate Navy gain the trust of Orgrim to arrange such a big thing? Definitely not. Therefore, Teach confirmed one thing on the spot. As early as more than 10 or 20 years ago, Orgrim of Hosgarode has already been deployed in the Navy. This kind of ambition and courage made Teach's admiration and awe of Orgrim even more profound. If Orgrim knew about this, I guess I have to thank Doflamingo. Marshal ID Teach, Virgo also responded. Ti-Chi then put away his surprise and said with a smile, sure enough, Lord Hammer is really good at it. Fergo knew that he must have misunderstood something, but he did not intend to explain anything. Anyway, the Don Quixote family and the Warhammer pirates are all in the same team, and they will never suffer any loss. He nodded slightly and accepted the sentence. Baccarat followed up and said, whatever you two want to eat, just order whatever you want. Please wait a moment, there will be guests coming soon. Tikai put out the cigar in his hand in the ashtray, and said with a smile on his lips, ha 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 ha, are you really casual? Of course, this is how we treat our guests. Baccarat smiled and nodded. Then I have to try this Cracona red wine worth 200 million berry, I've never heard of it before, Teach said unceremoniously. Baccarat did not stop anything, but instead introduced, this wine is generally not sold to the outside world, because, this was brewed by Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, himself in the early years. Oh, there was a gleam in Tikai's eyes, and then he quickly said, then I want to have a good taste. Follow reminds you, 3 things about reading: hoard, recommend, and share. Support the original works of Follow Xiaowang, b.fallow.com, and enjoy all the original works. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 696. Baccarat knows that she is probably not qualified to know what is going to be discussed here. Perhaps Mr. Tetsalo should be qualified, but so far, Mr. Tetsalo has never shown his face except when he received an arrow and looking. Therefore, Baccarat concluded that this matter should have nothing to do with their golden city. The Warhammer pirates have such a big plate, and all the systems are running smoothly. They can help whenever they can, but they are by no means troublesome. Therefore, Baccarat didn't think much, greeted Tikai and Virgo with a smile, turned around and left the house. This guy Teach is a standard pirate, uneducated, with a mud-legged background, and a ruthless energy about him. Rude is the label he puts out there. This is normal. When Orgrim first debuted, he was similar to him. Even wilder and ruder than him. This is true for most pirates, and pirates like Prince Charming Cavendish are in the minority after all. Once Baccarat left, Tiki felt more relaxed. He didn't regard Fergo next to him as a navy at all, and he had already made up his mind. This guy was more than 10 or 20 years old, and he was probably a pirate. He might be the legendary soldier that Orgrim brought out from the small town of Ogalan in the North Sea. Tikai wanted to open his mouth and tease Baccarat. After all, the common topics between men often started with women. But when the words came to his lips, he closed them again. Although he is a little rude, he is not really stupid. Baka 670 pulls such a beautiful girl, and she has some status in the Golden City. Maybe she is related to a certain big boss of the Warhammer pirates? If you are chattering like this and don't know what is going on, you might offend others. If you offend Orgrim once, you will be forced to do a job with a narrow escape from death. If he offended Orgrim and the Warhammer pirates a few more times, would he still have a way to survive? Be careful with your words and actions. I am no longer the little brother Tiki I once was. Now I am the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. In the future, I might become the 2nd generation of the Yonko after my father. By then, you might be qualified to talk to Orgrim. At least, you don't have to kneel anymore, right? Thinking about it, Tikai felt a little annoyed again. What's going on? Teach, you are determined to be a great pirate and stir up trouble in this era. Why is it that when I think of Orgrim, I am 3 points shorter? While Tiki was thinking about these messy things, Virgo picked up the menu that Tiki had just thrown on the table. It looks heavy, but once you get it, it seems very light. Looking at every corner, it's obvious that a lot of effort has been put into this menu. But Virgo didn't pay attention to this. After opening the menu and taking a look at it, he was a little surprised. He didn't know how the food was, but it was really expensive. As a vice admiral of the Navy headquarters who does not have a huge source of unidentified assets, Fergo can be regarded as a diamond king. But his net worth is really not much. He made some calculations and found out that if he was asked to settle the bill, he would probably lose a lot of money. Fortunately, Fergo just thought about it casually. He is different from Teach. Teach is an outsider here, but Fergo, although he knows few people, is definitely one of his own. So he ordered the food without hesitation, and rang the bell to call the waiter in. He opened his mouth and ordered a lot of dishes, and by the way, he was very considerate and helped Tikai order the Kokraken, a red wine worth 200 million belly, brewed by the legendary first swordsman Mihawk himself. While ordering, Teach sat aside without saying a word. In fact, Teach's memory is very good, and he can even be said to have a photographic memory. So even though he just casually flipped through the menu, he had already written down all the prices in his mind. Not intentionally, just remembered. So after a little observation of the dishes that Fergo ordered, Teach became more convinced of one thing. That is this Vice Admiral Fergo. He is definitely not a corrupted Vice Admiral. He is a member of the Warhammer Pirates. Ask yourself, even if he has agreed to cooperate with Orgrim, have you ever seen him, Teach, casually order any dish just now? It was the bottle of wine, he just made fun of it. Why? In the final analysis, it is still because of the inability to let go and distrust. There is a sense of crisis here. I don't want to leave too many clues. But Virgo didn't care about this at all. Among the details, Teach already had some information. But this is a good thing. This proves more and more that there should still be hope for survival in those seemingly inevitable paths that Orgrim arranged for him. Just as Orgrim expected, Teach's heart became slightly more stable. Thief, ha 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 ha, Fergo, when did you join the Warhammer Pirates? Tikai asked with a big smile. I have never joined the Warhammer Pirates, I am a vice admiral in the Navy headquarters, Fergo said very calmly. Tikai rolled his eyes slyly, and then said, as you say, we are now on the same rope. If you can eat here, it means you must be related to us. Tick opened his mouth and shut up. It's us, but Virgo has been undercover in the Navy for so many years, and he is not an idiot. He did not accept his behavior at all, and said softly, I just wanted to have a meal with Miss Baccarat. As for this is the Golden City, the neutral zone, isn't it? Tisk, Teach smacked his lips a little, and then said, you have been in the Navy for so many years, you should be able to stand firm, right? So Fergo said again. Brother, my life will be handed over to you when the time comes, Tikai said again. Fergo was stunned for a moment, but his expression did not change. He did not know the plan. It seems that, this Teach should be a very key figure. I surrendered my life, in other words, he took refuge with Mr. Chui. It's possible, but Fergo didn't directly confirm it. But more or less, his attitude towards Teach was a little gentler. Tikai naturally felt it, and smiled secretly in his heart. Brother, how can you understand my methods? Soon, all the dishes were served. However, neither Teach nor Virgo moved, and the two of them were chatting a little more freely at this time. Just as Teach and Virgo were chatting away, the door was opened again. This time, there is no beautiful Miss Baccarat, only Enelu and Lucky. Lucci felt that Baccarat was not involved in this matter, so he didn't care. As for Eniro, she simply doesn't want Baccarat to show up here. With several men sitting here and it's a dinner party, Baccarat will inevitably feel that way no matter what she does. Thinking of this, Enelu felt a little unhappy, so he did not arrange for Baccarat to come in. Could this be possessiveness? Enelu thought in his heart. However, these thoughts were quickly put away. The moment he stepped into the door, a smile appeared on his face. After all, he was here to trick Tikai into working for his life. How bad would it be if he always lost face? The smile that should be given should still be given. Anilu is still very dignified when doing things, but Lucci doesn't care about this, but he is in a good mood, so naturally he doesn't show off. Welcome to the Golden City, Teach. Anilu only said hello to Tikai when he came in. Lucci directly sat down next to Fergo, completely lifeless, hugged Fergo's shoulders and said, I've heard about it a long time ago. You are lucky. This scene fell in Tikai's eyes, and it was considered that all his previous guesses were fulfilled. Neither Anilu nor Lucci regarded Fergo as an outsider. Sure enough, Fergo was an undercover agent and had never been what kind of navy, let alone degenerate. He was black from the beginning. I have wanted to come to such a great place for a long time, Tikai grinned and said with a big smile. Just like it? If you like it, I will get an identity for you later. From now on, you will be one of our own in Golden City, Anilu said with a chuckle. Only in Golden City, Tiki muttered in his mind. In other words, once you leave the Golden City, you can no longer think of yourself as one of your own, right? After a few casual greetings, Lucci and Anilu moved their chopsticks, and then Virgo and Tikai became rude. Opening the wine bottle, Tikai laughed and said, 20 million Baileys of wine, come on, although you should have tasted it, I still give you a drink. As he said that, he was about to pour the wine. Lucci's expression changed and he asked Krakena. That's right, what's wrong? Tikai asked strangely. Lucci quickly waved his hand and said, no, I vomited after drinking this wine, you can drink it. Anilu also waved his hands and said, me too, Lucci and I drank a little too much yesterday, and we haven't recovered yet. You two just have fun. Virgo didn't care about anything. He nodded and raised the wine glass. Seeing this, Tikai didn't bother to think too much and poured it directly for Virgo. 200 million, he, with a smile on his lips, Teach clinked a glass with Virgo and put the drink to his lips. Then, he pretended to take a sip, as if he wanted to express his opinion on the wine. As a result, as soon as the drink reached his mouth, Tikai's eyes showed a hint of surprise and confusion, and then his face turned ugly. So does Virgo. Both of them couldn't help but spit it out at the same time. Fortunately, they were all under control and didn't ruin the meal. Cough cough cough, this wine, I'm afraid that for a vulgar person like me, I can't taste it, Tiki muttered. Ha 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 ha, I already told you that I drank this wine and spit it out, but you don't believe it, Lucci laughed and said. Tikai thought to himself, who can understand what you mean? I thought you were tired of drinking. It turns out you are really vomiting. This, can it also be worth 200 million? Virgo wiped the drink from the corner of his mouth and couldn't help but complain. Mr. Mihawk's swordsmanship is very good, but his winemaking skills are just that. In the early years, he built a wine cellar by himself in Avalon, and we have all suffered from his 0.4 abuse. In the end, no one dared to drink the wine. Mr. Chui thought it would be a waste to leave it alone, so he waved his hand and sent it to the Golden City, Anilu explained with a smile. After coming to the Golden City, Mr. Tetsalo was afraid that the wine would ruin his reputation, and he was also worried that Mihawk and Mr. Hammer would be embarrassed, so he directly set a high price of 200 million belly. I just want to hang this wine high. You are so brave, Lucci said with some gloating. This wine, no one ordered, Tikai couldn't help but ask. The price of 200 million belly is high or low, but those who are willing to spend 200 million belly to drink must be people with status and know something about it. Krakena has no reputation at all. If you can't achieve high and low, naturally no one will like it. The details are unclear, but this thing is definitely a bargain, Anilu said with a smile again. It means I have no identity, don't you understand? Tikai felt that he was being ridiculed invisibly. But he wasn't angry or anything. This wasn't an angry thing, it was just a little joke and farce. Teach stuffed the wine cork back and said earnestly, Marco, my first team member, has taken care of me for so many years, but I haven't brought him any gifts. I'll take this bottle of wine back for him to drink." Enelu and others looked at Tikai in surprise. Why did this shameless posture look so familiar? Ah, by the way, Mr. Chui. Mr. Chui is also so shameless. Filu reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support the original works of Filu Novel Network, b.faloo.com. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 697. In the courtyard of Avalon, Orgrim was putting one hand in his trouser pocket and holding a shower head in the other, watering the queen's weeds in the yard very casually. Not far away, the graceful figure of the queen was squatting by the grass, holding a small shovel in her hand, and with a serious look on her face, she was loosening the soil for her beloved gardening. "Hey!" Queen Stacy gave a sweet shout, lifted up a piece of hard soil, and put on a proud smile on her face. The queen's happiness is so simple. She didn't need much power, so she gave gangplank the entire happy street. She didn't need any adventure, the first half of her life was enough, so she rarely left Avalon. What she needs is to live an ordinary life like now with Orgrim and the little sisters in the yard. This is enough for the queen. Orgrim is also willing to accompany her to do these seemingly boring things. Because it seems that only at this time, the queen will show some cute looks. On weekdays, she behaves like a cold and mature royal sister. Looking at her at this time, there is always a contrasting feeling of cuteness. There was nothing major, and Orgrim felt very comfortable in such an ordinary day. Sometimes he would also think that what he had fought so hard for in the past, maybe in the end, he ended up with such mediocrity, right? Just when Orgrim was watering the water, he was thinking randomly. 2 more beautiful figures walked in at the courtyard door. Robin and Hancock walked side by side, talking and laughing, each holding a bag in their hands. The bag contains some vegetables and fruits. Orgrim turned his head and glanced, and then said with a smile, "I went to buy these again. The head maid of Britannia often complained to me, saying that you have done all the work of their maid team." It made her very embarrassed. Naturally, someone took care of all the food and drink expenses in Orgrim's courtyard. But Robin and Hancock, and even Queen Stussy, still like to go out and buy it themselves. Either those expensive luxuries or the like, or inconspicuous daily necessities like firewood, rice, oil, and salt. I feel that if I choose something myself, I will have a greater sense of accomplishment, Hancock pouted and said. I read books all day long, and occasionally I want to go out for some fresh air. Robin said with a gentle smile. I think you are right. Orgrim shook the shower head, and he had finished pouring the water in it. Her lady queen was still squatting on the ground, using a small shovel in her hand to pull the ground, and turned around and asked, "Do you need to cook when you buy groceries? Shall I help?" As soon as she finished speaking, Robin and Hancock quickly shook their heads. No, no, these are fresh vegetables. Robin Sauce and I are going to make a fruit and vegetable salad, not for cooking. If we cook, there will be too much fumes, so we should wait for the kitchen to make it. Hancock said quickly. Robin also said with a smile, "Yes, eat more fruits and vegetables, it is good for your health. Eating meat is good for your health. If you don't eat meat for a day, your whole body will be dull." Orgrim said without hesitation. "I always feel like you are all on guard against me," her lady queen said, somewhat unhappy. But as soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and hummed again, and started digging the soil happily. The rest of the people didn't care about the queen's little mood. Orgrim turned around to refill the water, while Hancock and Robin were chatting and laughing as they went to make their fruit salad. Speaking of which, Enero and Lucci should have already met with Teach and Virgo, right? After Orgrim filled the water, he returned to Stussy and continued to water the flower path. The queen's hand was splashed with some water, and she pushed Orgrim aside with some dissatisfaction, and then said, "We must have met, right? But this is just a small matter, just getting to know each other, nothing will go wrong." Although Lucci is frivolous, he is still very methodical when doing things seriously. "What's more, there is Enelu here, of course I am not worried about anything going wrong, I just remembered it casually," Orgrim said softly. Andre entered the Grand Line. The Queen suddenly said, "Well, it seems they went to Carnival City." "They chose a very entertaining route," Orgrim said with a smile. "It seems that after entering the Grand Line, there are 7 routes to choose from. After choosing, you have to follow this route and go all the way until you finally converge on the Chambord Islands. Shenshen. You can't change the route or anything in the middle of the journey. In fact, these are limitations and restrictions for newcomers because they do not have enough permanent record pointers. Only one island can survive. Of course Andrest and the others are not short of this, they can jump repeatedly in the Grand Line. However, it seemed that they were prepared to abide by the rules of newcomers, chose a route, and headed towards the Chambord Islands. The route Orgrim took was actually not much different from Luffy's, both from Alabasta, Drum Island, and the capital of the Seven Waters. It wasn't that he didn't have other options, but he felt that it was his first time to visit the islands in these stories and experience them. Now Andrest's group of people did not choose this route. Instead, they chose a highly entertaining route. Along the way, there are various celebration islands, such as Carnival City, Food City, Swimming Pool City, and Shopping Island. The most famous thing is that this voyage leads to the Queen of Spring Island. From the Queen of Spring Island, you can take the sea train to the Seven Waters. Speaking of which, the progress of the sea train is already quite terrifying. There are not many buildings within the Four Seas, probably because the rule of the Four Seas is very stable for the world government, and their first priority is the Grand Line. In the New World, only Orgrim is building it. In other words, only the 3 major areas of the Don Quixote family, the Beast Pirates, and the Warhammer Pirates will enjoy the sea train project. Although these 3 major areas combined, they have captured at least 1/2 of the New World's territory. That's right, only about half of it is occupied by the Whitebeard Pirates. The rest of the sea area is occupied by other pirates who are a mixture of fish and dragons. Taken individually, no one currently has a bigger territory than the Warhammer Pirates. But if these ordinary pirates were to gather together, no one would have a larger territory than them. Orgrim didn't intend to, and he never thought about grabbing it. The entire New World is a big cake for the pirate camp, and no one can eat it all, not even the Pirate King. So just eating the most delicious pieces is enough, and the rest should be left to others to survive, right? Closer to home, although it occupies almost half of the New World, it was not that big before the last battle for kingship began. Therefore, although Orgrim has been committed to laying sea trains connecting various islands. But in fact, in the New World, the density of sea trains is still insufficient. However, in the Evernight Sea, the sea train network has matured. The roaring trains have tightly connected the entire Evernight Sea, shortening the distance between the islands in terms of speed. Don't underestimate this. This conceptual shortening of the distance can greatly enhance the Warhammer Pirates' dominance over the entire Evernight Sea. To use the simplest analogy, in the past, phone bugs reported that something happened on a certain island, such as a rebellion. So it would be almost 17 or 18 days from the time Avalon received the report and dispatched counterinsurgency troops and arrived at the island, right? After arriving, even if the rebels can be defeated and order restored, the island has already been tortured almost as much as it should be. It can only be regarded as a mess. But now if there is a sea train, the counterinsurgency army can arrive directly by train in 3 or 2 days. This shows how big the gap is. This is not only the projection of military power, but also political radiation and economic stimulation. The entire Eternal Night Sea territory, gathered together, was like a powerful giant growing. Compared with the sea trains laid here in the New World, the sea trains laid by the world government in the outside world are even more powerful. Almost all the major islands in the first half of the Grand Line were built with sea trains. This has indeed greatly strengthened the world government's control over the islands in the first half of the Grand Line, as well as its security forces. It can even be said that, to a certain extent, it has stemmed the tide of the Great Pirate Age. It is precisely because of the emergence of sea trains that the originally depressed Kishuil have become glorious again. Now, it is logical that Master Tom's apprentice Asibago should be the leader there. The Sea Train project was originally a cooperation project between the Warhammer pirates and the world government. It was originally used to test the waters. At the beginning, they were on guard against each other and tried to dismantle each other several times. Orgrim led his people to dismantle all the sea trains set up by the world government in the New World. Orgrim set up a sea train outside the New World, and the world government also caused trouble. However, as time has changed and the relationship between the two parties has changed, the Sea Train project has gradually come together. Not to mention, the third construction group of the Warhammer Pirates has now signed an outsourcing project with the world government. A new sea train is being built in the East China Sea. From the perspective of making money, there is no doubt that the business in the Dark World and the business in the Golden City are the most profitable businesses under Orgrim. But from a development perspective, Orgrim still believes that Master Tom's sea train technology is the technology that can truly bring changes to the world. Just wait and see, one day, this ocean will be bound together by this technology, and by then, the trajectory of life around the world will have undergone earth-shaking changes. And the hidden benefits brought by this technology, such as enhancing dominance and so on, these are now cheap to the world government. But Orgrim doesn't care. Anyway, when this technology really achieves these effects, his Kashgro family will also be members of the world government, and he will enjoy the benefits. Speaking of which, have you heard of it? Master Tom has completed the development of the third-generation submarine, and he wants to remodel the Black Narwhal. Queen Stussy suddenly spoke. Orgrim gathered his thoughts and said with a smile, I heard about it, but I dismissed it. Why? Queen Stussy asked with some surprise. There is no need to modify the Black Narwhal for us, the Warhammer pirates. Its symbolic significance is greater than its practical significance. Let it remain in its well-known appearance. If that guy Tom wants to do something, wouldn't it be better to build a new one? Orgrim said with a smile. After laughing, he shook his head and said, but he probably doesn't have time to rebuild. Recently, he has a new big project that took more than 10 years of planning and research and development. Finally, there are signs. What big project? Stussy asked curiously. At this moment, Robin came out from the house carrying a bowl of fruit and vegetable salad, chewing the salad in his mouth, with a happy and satisfied expression on his face, and interrupted with a smile. I know, I just heard someone discussing the Sky Train plan. That's right. Orgrim nodded and said with a smile, Master Tom wants to open up a new artificial train route to the White Sea and the White Sea. Can this be done? The Stucks were stunned. I don't know exactly what the situation is. What about the technology? I don't understand either. Anyway, I know that they have been researching it for more than 10 years and have used a lot of Air Island technology combined with our Qinghai technology. Beckman mentioned not long ago that this should be a 10-year or even a century-old project. It has nothing to do with our short period of time. It just consumes a lot of Bailey. But we happen to be short of everything now, but we are not short of anything. Bailey, if you vote, you vote. It's not like you came to this world in vain, Orgrim chuckled. If you came to this world just to destroy, that would be too boring. You should leave your own seeds somewhere. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support the original works of Philo Novel Network, b.faloo.com, all the. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 698. Melview. Boss Shiji's base camp in the New World. Of course, Melview, once famous all over the world, is rarely mentioned now. At that time, Melview was a prosperous place and was the home of the pirate overlords with many masters. Now, Avalon has long replaced Melview. Even among the new generation of pirates, many people have never heard of Melview. This isolated island hanging high in the sky is now nothing more than a retirement home for the old lions who were once proud of the world. Perhaps because of this island lacks the chilling atmosphere that only pirates have, and has more spring and brightness. The sun is shining here and the breeze is blowing, it's like a fairyland on earth. I have to say that Boss Shiji has a very high style in this regard. It doesn't look like he is a pirate at all, he looks a bit like an elderly artist. At this time, Boss Shiji was sitting on the rocking chair in his courtyard, his eyes were slightly closed, and there was a faint snore between breathing. The sun fell on him, looking quite gentle. The sunshine is just right now, and the old lion is also taking a nap. The yard is full of flowers and plants, and when the wind blows, it always brings a touch of fragrance. After a while, there was a sound of footsteps outside the courtyard door. The sound of footsteps was very unique. It sounded like farting when walking. No need to look, this is Shiji's old subordinate, Dr. Indigo. As soon as he stepped into the courtyard, Boss Shiji, who was sleeping, opened his eyes. A flash of light flashed from his eyes, and it dissipated completely in just a moment. But there is no doubt that although this lion is old, anyone who dares to underestimate him will still be torn to pieces. Brother Indigo, can you replace your worn-out shoes? Always annoying. Shiji sat up from the rocking chair and said with some annoyance. Indigo said with a smile on his face, "Okay, Admiral, I'll change it later." Many years ago, Indigo met Shiji. The relationship between the two of them was quite close. It was no longer the kind of friendship between a captain and his subordinates. Shiji always mentioned his crappy shoes that made people fart, and Indigo always agreed and said he would change them when he got home. But in fact, Indigo never changed, and Shiji never really got angry about it. Ignoring Indigo, Shiji turned his head and glanced at the treetop not far away, where a newspaper was hanging. And the gin bailey that he had placed there before had disappeared. There was no doubt that the newsbirds had arrived. A smile appeared on Shiji's face. He tapped his feet lightly on the ground, and an inexplicable energy floated out, and disappeared again in the blink of an eye. But soon, the newspaper hanging on the treetop fell down very spiritually and landed in Shiji's hands. Indigo originally had something to say, but seeing Shiji pick up the newspaper, he didn't say anything. Instead, he turned around and walked to the table in the yard not far away and picked it up from the table. "Teacup, pour yourself a cup of tea." First, I opened the first 2 pages. There was no big news, but it was mentioned that Marineford was on confidentiality alert or something. As the Warring States General expected, in recent months, newspapers have often said that Marineford has raised the level of intelligence confidentiality. Therefore, the current news is a bit boring to read. Shiji only glanced at the title and turned over it, not even bothering to pay attention to it. But that's right, he didn't plan to go to Marineford to do anything. He was retiring at home, so why should he get involved in these messy things? As if he was deliberately looking for some news, he flipped left and right, and after skipping some messy news, Shiji's eyes stopped on a small page. The smile on his face became even stronger. Kajgro Andrest, the son of the night, causing a carnival, is very small, which just shows that this is not a big deal, otherwise he would not be squeezed into this corner, and maybe even, this is what Morgans and the others see. For Orgrim's sake, I only gave it a small space. However, Shiji looked at it with gusto and nodded from time to time. There wasn't much information given in the newspapers, and it was actually not a big deal. It was that Andrest, Ace, Yamato, and the others had a conflict with another group of pirates in Carnival City and caused a big fuss. It's that simple. Don't cry. Gee ha 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 ha, he is just like his father, he can't take any time off. Shiji laughed loudly after reading it. Brother Indigo smiled and did not answer. He knew that his admiral was just amusing himself. Is the young highness the same as Master Chui? Not necessarily. Thinking about it carefully, Indigo discovered that Lord Hammer actually kept a low profile after he entered the Grand Line and rarely caused trouble. Of course, whenever he caused trouble, he would be in huge trouble, causing the Navy Admiral to the kind who can't sit still. Now comparing His Highness, the gap between father and son is still very big. Just when Indigo was thinking about these things, Shiji waved happily. Indigo still didn't make any moves. He knew that his admiral was not calling him. Sure enough, as soon as Shiji made a move, a small scissor placed on the steps not far away flew up and landed quickly. It fell into Shiji's hands. Shiji was also interested. He carefully cut out the newspaper that recorded Andrest's great achievements. After finishing it, he looked at his craftsmanship with satisfaction and nodded secretly. It's still the same. Without looking back, with a slight tap of his foot, another photo album flew out of the room. After landing in Shiji's hand, Shiji opened the album with satisfaction and put the cut newspaper in. He flipped through it at will. If you look carefully, you will find that the photo album in Shiji's hand is full of photos of him and Andrest, as well as some newspaper clippings about Andrest's deeds. Since childhood, they range from babies to handsome young men today. After looking at the photo album for a while, Shiji said with some emotion, "Time flies so fast." This time, Brother Indigo answered the conversation, nodded and said, "Yes, in a blink of an eye, so many years have passed, Admiral." Andre also grew up from a baby to the handsome young man he is now, and even became a captain himself. When I look back, I can always think of his cute appearance when he was a child. Shiji said with a smile. I still remember, at that time, Master Chui said that he was going to be spanked. Admiral, you are going to go to Master Chui to settle the score with your knife, Indigo said a little funny again. After hearing Orgrim's name, Shiji's eyes seemed a little distracted again, and his thoughts wandered to somewhere. How many years ago? He couldn't remember clearly, 1497? Or earlier or later. That year, Orgrim defeated the Shampoo Islands miserably. If he and Kaido hadn't appeared, would that kid have died there? Not long after, the situation changed, and he suffered a disastrous defeat in the Adver waters. If this kid hadn't rushed out of the bottom of the sea in one breath, he would have been doomed long ago, right? He recalled that time, when Orgrim lived in Melview. He was really a great young man. He learned everything quickly and was very perseverant. As soon as they met, he boasted that he wanted to be his disciple and successor. At first, I only thought that this kid had a big mouth, and because he saved her and was Neiman's eldest brother, I gave him such a chance. But just such an opportunity was firmly seized by that bastard guy. So many years have passed, and he has never embarrassed his golden lion Shiji. He punched Whitebeard, stepped on the Navy headquarters, and became the strongest in the New World. Flower. Ha ha ha, Shiji smiled and put his wandering thoughts back together. When people get old, they always recall the past inadvertently. I'm really old, Shiji shook his head. Indigo didn't answer the call. In fact, he didn't know how to answer it. 20 years ago, my admiral started this big plan to create ancient weapons. He was extremely ambitious at the time. After experiencing a series of changes, the admiral himself seemed to have left everything to Orgrim, holding in his hands this unfinished plan. I thought that with the admiral's temperament, there would be no problem at all after lying dormant for 20 years and then going to sea. But after so many years, especially after His Highness was born, Indigo was naturally able to notice that his admiral's expectations for the plan, his ambition for the world, and his lion-like unruliness were all disappearing. Recently, the admiral has become even more indifferent to this plan. Most of the time, he is resting quietly, like an old man in his twilight years. Has the once proud golden lion put away his minions? Shiji didn't really feel sad about spring or autumn here. After casually smiling, he looked at Indigo and asked, "Why are you here today free?" Only then did Indigo's thoughts come together, and he quickly said, "Admiral, the plan has been accomplished." Plan, Shiji muttered in surprise at first, as if he didn't even remember what the plan was. But as soon as he said this, there was a stronger surprise in his eyes. Artificial ancient weapons. IQ evolution? Shiji sat up suddenly and asked. Indigo nodded without any hesitation and said, "Yes, Admiral, it's completely over." "How?" Shiji asked again. "Even an ordinary wild boar can grow to be as aggressive as the Neptune type, or even more aggressive," Indigo said in a very calm tone. Listening to these words, Shiji fell silent. The long-cherished wish of more than 20 years has finally come true. But for some reason, he didn't feel as happy as he had imagined. On the contrary, it feels a bit burdensome. Indigo looked at the admiral who had fallen silent. He felt somewhat understanding and did not feel too surprised. "Admiral, we are now, how to go?" Indigo hesitated for a moment, then asked. Shiji raised his head and glanced at Indigo, rubbed the corners of his eyes with some irritability, waved his hands and said, "Let me think about it, you can go down first." Brother Indigo didn't encourage Shiji, and he didn't know what to do. As for encouraging Shiji to come back to the world, it felt unnecessary. After all, Mr. Hammer is sitting in that position. "Our Admiral, what are you doing when you go out? Compete with Mr. Chui for world hegemony? Isn't this sick? You gave up your position in the first place, but 20 years later, when he is still young and strong, and we are older, you jump out to fight? It's obviously a mentally retarded behavior." "Ah!" Walking out of the courtyard, Indigo muttered helplessly. At the time, the admiral probably didn't expect that Master Hammer would be able to sit in the most powerful position in the past 20 years, therefore, now we are in a dilemma. If Orgrim doesn't become the strongest, then it doesn't seem to matter if Shiji comes out. He can bypass Orgrim and continue to compete with Whitebeard and the other big guys. What to say now? It's very inappropriate. His disciples have become the strongest. Shiji goes out to compete with Newgate. Isn't this a price drop? Times have changed, Admiral Indigo muttered, shook his head helplessly, stepped on his fart shoes, and left here. Felu reminds you, 3 things about reading: hide, recommend, and share. Support Felu's novels net, b.faloo.com. Original works. All you are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 699. New World Gateway C. In front of a medium-sized island, huge warships of the Navy came in and out. Ever since the last round of pirate kingship in the New World ended, this place has been very busy. What can be seen with the naked eye is that a magnificent naval fortress is gradually taking shape here. Navy engineers worked here day and night to build this fortress. Today, this fortress is officially named G-3 Naval Branch. Originally, the Navy had a G-3 branch, but everything had to make way for the New World branch. Of course, the original G-3 branch was renamed directly. At this time, in the newly built port of this naval branch, Kuzan, wearing a cloak of justice, an admiral's epaulets, and an eye patch on his head, was standing here. The sea breeze blew through his fluffy hair. The coolness not only did not bring refreshment, but made Kuzan couldn't help but yawn. He has been in the New World for a while and has been stationed here, including supervising the construction. Although this task seems very ordinary, anyone can do it. But in fact, Kyuzin also knew very well that the future must be in charge of matters here. There is only one reason. This is the New World, and it is the Navy's outpost to enter the New World. Even though he was sitting here, he had already killed many pirates who were bold enough to cause trouble here. If it were an ordinary lieutenant general here, the mission would probably have failed, right? The New World is not a kind place. There is fighting everywhere. After licking his nose, Kyuzin watched as a Navy warship with a pink rabbit logo slowly sailed into the port. After taking a glance, Kyuzin yawned again and muttered, "Mr. Sengoku is really doting on Jun. When he was in G-5, he was so unconventional. But when he returned to the headquarters, he still had a flamboyant attitude. 17 Is it powerful? The sails of the Navy's warships are all pure white seagulls, and Jun is a pink rabbit. If it weren't for the fact that all warships have the same standard, I really doubt there is something wrong." As Jun's friend and admiral, he can naturally complain about Jun's debauchery without any scruples. However, the several naval captains standing next to Kyuzin did not have the courage, and all of them pretended not to hear. At the same time, it can be seen that the eyes of these naval generals are full of expectation and excitement. Jun. That's a flower of the Navy, the famous Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit. Ah, no, it's not appropriate to call him Lieutenant General now. He should be called Chief Inspector Komomoto. General, I heard that the Grand Inspector is likely to receive the title of General in the near future, right? A naval colonel suddenly asked. Kyuzin scratched his head, smacked his lips and said, "I'm not sure. After all, I haven't returned to the headquarters recently, but judging from the past situation, there is a high probability that it's true. Whether it's the chief inspector or the chief staff officer, they all held the rank of general before, well, but there is no real power. However, this term is very strange. Lieutenant General Ahe has been the chief staff officer for so many years, but he still does not hold the title of general. Now Jun also serves as the lieutenant general and also serves as the chief inspector. This time, Jun is here to supervise. The investigation is here. In fact, even if Jun is the chief inspector, Kyuzin is a naval admiral after all. From all aspects, he is stronger than the chief inspector, and there is no need for Jun at all. There is no need to be regarded as an admiral. With his identity, he came to the port to welcome the arrival of the Grand Inspector Jun. But Kyuzin came anyway. After all, regardless of these things, he had a good relationship with Jun, right? The first thing the Grand Inspector did when he took office was in public and private matters. Kyuzin felt that Jun should be given full face. Just as Kyuzin was chatting with the Navy around him, the ladder was lowered on Jun's warship, and soon, like stars like holding the moon in her arms, the gorgeous Jun eldest sister walked off the boat with a cigarette in her mouth. She still preferred pink, wearing a pink suit and a cloak of justice. She walked step by step with great momentum. He looked like a big boss. Kyuzin was a little surprised when he looked over there. What surprised him was naturally not what happened to Jun, but the people following Jun. "Isn't that my junior brother?" White Hunter Smoke Ge. Kyuzin has some doubts in his heart. If he remembers correctly, in the early years, Smoker was so prickly that he was tossed by Marshal of the Warring States period to work as a salted fish in Rogtown in the East China Sea. I haven't heard of this either. This guy's transfer, why did he end up following Jun in the blink of an eye? Then he looked at it a little more, and found that Smoker's shoulder insignia also changed from the rank of colonel to the rank of major general. Has fortune turned? Ha 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 ha, Kyuzin thought with some joy in his heart. He has a very good relationship with Smoker. The two of them are gentlemen. Even if they don't meet often, they both admire each other's justice. Jun also saw Kyuzin at this time and walked over with a smile and a cigarette in his mouth. "Does the general give me such face?" Jun was not polite when he came up and directly teased Kyuzin. Kyuzan took off the blindfold hanging on his head and said with a smile, after all, the chief inspector is visiting. What if something happens to me? If you make a mistake, wouldn't it make you catch your pigtails? After they finished speaking, both of them laughed. After laughing, they didn't say anything about going in to take a look. They just stood on the port and started chatting while blowing the sea breeze. Smog you, what's going on? Kyuzan raised his eyebrows and asked. Smoker sighed helplessly, and then said it's nothing. Before, a few pirates ran away in Rogtown, and I left my post without permission and caught up with them the Grand Line. As a result, the headquarters immediately recruited me and sent me to the sea train overnight, waiting for when I came back to my senses. I discovered that, not only was I promoted, I was also transferred to work for my eldest sister. Smoker's experience is also a bit fantastic. The pirates who escaped in Rogtown are the two bastards Luffy and Bucky. Of course, Smoker also mistook Roronoa and Kuina. Think it's a pirate. What's even more exaggerated is that Bucky and Luffy actually got together. The ability to fly to Rogtown and enter the first half of the Grand Route was all due to Bucky. This is so outrageous. But Orgrim and the others didn't know about these things, and that kid didn't do anything big. Orgrim had ruined the entire original story into a mess, and he didn't care what Luffy would become. Well, just don't mess with him. After Luffy and the others ran away from Rogtown, Smoker couldn't hold back, so he led his men to pursue them into the first half of the Grand Line. As a result, before they had even taken 2 steps, he and Dusky were directly detained by a naval base, taken to the Shanghai train, and sent to Marineford. Originally, Smoker thought that he had gone too far this time and would be punished when he returned. Then it was discovered that it was not a formal recruitment by the headquarters at all, but the new Navy Chief Inspector Momo-jun who wanted to transfer this thorn to his side to take action. Then came the promotion of rank and title. Major Smoker surpassed the rank of Commodore in one breath and became a glorious Major General of the Navy headquarters. Smoker didn't have much contact with Jun. When he was in his early years, Jun went to G-5. Smoker had a prickly personality, and he didn't like women to be the boss over him. Therefore, after he came under Jun's command, he often started troubles with Jun. But, who is Jun? Jun is the real leader in the Navy gangster world. G-5, who is known as the Navy's trash can, has been arranged obediently by her. Who is a young and energetic Smoker? Jun didn't even talk nonsense to Smoker. If he caught Smoker and brought him to the training ground, he would give him a violent beating. From then on, as long as Smoker had any trouble with her, Jun wouldn't care about it and would catch him with a hammer. When it comes to talent, Smoker is quite good. The bosses of warring states, Garp and Zifa, were very optimistic about him back then, and he has a natural ability. Even at the beginning, the warring states marshal still imagined that he could train Smoker to become a general. One can imagine how brilliant Smoker was at that time. But it was useless to show off anymore. He still went to the East China Sea and wasted his years. He has been dominating the novice village. Not only did his strength not increase much, but it actually declined. In this case, Jun, who was messing around in the top difficulty dungeon of the New World, didn't have to be too simple to deal with him, just beat Smoker with one hand. Smoker had never seen such a routine before. When he first joined Jun, he spent almost every day in the ward. After it was done, I went to Jinpi. Within half a day, I was beaten in again. After going back and forth countless times, Smoker finally gave in. No, when I call Jun now, I instinctively add the sentence big sister. Kyuzan was a little surprised when he looked at Smoker. He felt that he was not as irritable as before, right? He glanced at Jun again, gave a thumbs up and said, "You are still the best. Don't forget, I was once the all-powerful one in G-5, Jun waved his hand, as if this was all childish. Of course, Jun did not reveal his true thoughts. The reason why she used such brutal methods to deal with Smoker was actually to correct Smoker. And through these battles, the strength of Smog, the former genius problem child, can be understood. To be honest, I was very disappointed, but I also found that this guy was making rapid progress. On the first day of practice, he was put down in just a few moves. Later, I needed to be a little more serious. This also allowed Jun to grasp the clue, and finally understood how Smoker wanted to train him. He lacks nothing but a beating. If anything happens, take him out and beat him up. After a year and a half, he will definitely be transformed. Now it was just the initial results, and Smoker didn't realize at this time that the door to his own hell had just been opened. After chatting at the port for a while, Kyuzin led the Jun group towards the island. I heard that you are going to be awarded the title of general? Kyuzin was walking and suddenly asked. Jun grinned, glanced at Kyuzin and said, "What, afraid? Didn't you expect that? I didn't compete with you for generals back then, but now I can compete with you for marshals." Although Jun didn't give a clear answer, Kyuzin understood the meaning. Jun did not deny it, which meant that the headquarters had already started working to build momentum for Jun. After all, the younger brothers around him had heard the news. And it seems that they are looking forward to it. As expected, he is a flower of the Navy. He is very popular. If a rough guy were to do this kind of overtaking in a curve, you would think they would be sprayed to death by the thousands of mouths of the Navy. Fortunately, rather, I am quite happy, Kyuzin said with a smile. Jun glanced at Kyuzin and was silent for a moment. She understood what Kyuzin meant. In fact, if Sakazuki didn't want to reach the top, Kyuzin probably wouldn't even be interested in fighting for it. In Kyuzin's view, anyone can be the marshal, but not Sakazuki. Fire and water are incompatible. Now that Jun has appeared, and it seems to be a strong opponent, Kyuzin not only does not feel bad, on the contrary, he looked relieved. Alas, do you know why you were suppressed by Sakazuki on this matter? It's because of your attitude, Kyuzin, Jun said helplessly. Kyuzin shrugged and said, "Of course I know, but what can I do?" "Yes, what can I do? There seems to be no solution?" Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading, hiding, recommending, and sharing. Support Follow Novel Network, b.fallow.com Original Works, All a Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates Author, Zippo. Chapter 700. Kyuzin is in the temporary office of the G-3 branch. At this time, the group of people who just came from the port are all here. After taking off the justice cloak and casually hanging it on the hanger, Kyuzin waved his hand and said there is nothing, so there is no need to be polite. Just find a place to sit. There is indeed nothing here, just a place. There is a table, a chair, and a sofa. The sofa is quite small. It can be seen that this place has not been properly repaired. After all, even though the fortress has been built, in fact, the finishing work has not yet been completed. Jun was naturally not polite and sat directly on the sofa. Smoker and Dusky were very conscious and stood behind Jun, like door gods. Even though Smoker and Kyuzin have a good relationship, sometimes, you still have to pay attention to these rules. Jun looked around and asked, "Is there no ashtray?" "I don't smoke, so feel free to flick the ashes, this place is dirty anyway." Kyuzin smiled and said. "That's true. There is a layer of soil on the ground. After all, it is an unfinished construction site, so we can't ask for too much." Seeing that Kyuzin didn't mind, Jun didn't say anything more and just threw away the cigarette ashes. It bounced to the ground. He didn't say anything serious as soon as he came up. Kyuzin had obviously heard something and looked at Jun with some curiosity. He wanted to speak, but he didn't know how to say it. "Mother-in-law, if you have anything to say, just say it quickly." "What are you talking about?" Jun exhaled a puff of smoke and said unhappily. Ha 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 ha, isn't this taking your face into consideration? Kyuzin laughed loudly. After a slight pause, before Jun could speak again, Kyuzin asked, I heard that you and that bastard? Jun raised his eyebrows and said, Orgrim. Ahem, what else? Kyuzin pretended to clear his throat. I can't tell, you're quite a gossip, Jun complained at first, and then said, yeah, what's the matter? What's so shameless about it? A profession is a profession, and feelings are feelings. I have justice in my heart and love evil. Is there any problem? Yes, I liked and fell in love with that bastard. I confessed my love to him in Golden 190 City. As soon as Jun finished speaking, Kyuzin didn't react at all. Smoker, who was standing behind Jun, choked directly on the cigarette in his mouth, and the famous sword Hwazu in Dashki's hand fell to the ground. They had just arrived at the headquarters not long ago, so naturally they didn't know these tidbits of news. However, as a user with the natural smoke fruit ability and a swordsman who loves swords as much as his life, it is conceivable that the two of them would be shocked to this extent. How much trouble they have in their hearts. Sister Jun, how could you do this? Dashki didn't care so much anymore and quickly asked. Little Dusky, what am I doing? Jun gave Tasky a strange look. That Orgrim, but a pirate, Dassi Chi said. I know. I dream about killing him, Jun still said calmly. Dashki. But, didn't you just say that you like it, love him? Dashki said a little at a loss. Is there any conflict? What I like about him is his character, his unruly, arrogant, confident and arrogant spirit, but his identity is a pirate. As a navy, I like him, but at the same time I am determined to kill him. Is there something wrong with him? Jun said generously. The Dashki people were all dumbfounded. Jun said this nonsense and deceived her into lameness. It all sounds wrong, but if you really want to say there's something wrong, it seems like there really isn't anything. You are still too young, Dashki. You have never met that person so far. You have been entangled with him all your life. You love and hate him. When you meet him, you want to kill him with a knife, but you still dream about him in your dreams. That bastard, if one day you meet, I hope I can be your role model. Love, just love openly and openly, without worrying about anything. In the name of love, it is good to carry out justice, isn't it? Jun exhaled a puff of smoke and smiled. After hearing this, Dashki didn't know what was going on in her heart, but a figure appeared. It was a green algae-headed swordsman and a pirate. Next to him, there seems to be a girl who looks exactly like him. Even when Dashki was thinking about this, Smoker suddenly asked, what if one day, you beat him? The look in his eyes lit up at first, and then quickly dimmed. Then I will probably live with regrets for the rest of my life, Jun first said this. What would it be like to defeat Orgrim? From Jun's point of view, Orgrim would either be imprisoned in Imperial, or he would definitely die. But no matter what the ending is, Jun will feel heartbroken when he thinks about it. Smoker was stunned for a moment, but before he could speak, Jun continued, when the time comes, I may apply for retirement. Retirement? Smorg was stunned again. Well, then open a small restaurant or something and become a good cook. When Jun said this, a gentle smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Orgrim praised her for her delicious cooking. Jun is complicated. She dares to love and hate. She loves and admits her love openly. Orgrim's love and hatred also unwaveringly penetrated his own justice, and he was determined to kill Orgrim. Kyuzin looked at Jun with some complicated and emotional eyes. He had a deep friendship with Jun, so he naturally knew how proud and paranoid this woman is. As proud as she is, she freely admits her love, but as paranoid as she is, her hatred for Orgrim has never wavered. But Kyuzin knew that Jun like this would one day. At that certain moment, one's most brilliant scene will be released, and then it will be fleeting and wither away like fireworks. He wanted to dissuade Jun and ask Jun not to be stubborn here. But looking at Jun's gentle smile, he couldn't speak anymore. Jun was not stupid. What she just said had already proved that she already understood the path she had chosen. In this world, there are always some people who know that if they go down this road, they will be covered in blood, but they are still willing to walk on it. Suddenly, Kuzan discovered again that it turned out that not only Sakazuki, but also Jun was far better than him. Over the years, I have always been wavering, and the justice in my heart is vague. But Sakazuki is different from Jun. They have never been confused. No matter it is black and white, blood or water, they are unswervingly walking on the path of their choice, overcoming obstacles. Perhaps, people like them are the bright lights in the long night in this dark world, right? I'm still not as good as you, Kuzan suddenly chuckled and said. Jun didn't know what Kuzan was going through in his heart just now. He put away his somewhat complicated thoughts and asked, "Why are you inferior to me? You must have fallen in love with some beautiful female pirate, right?" When Zan heard this, he rolled his eyes at Jun, did not answer, and asked instead, "This matter of yours has reached my ears, where is the plan?" He jumped from the roof of the Fortress of Justice in Marineford and is still in hospital. Jun curled his lips and said. Puff, Kuzan spit out all the tea he just drank. Kaji, the tea dolphin, is a very low-key person in the Navy headquarters. He is a good friend with Garp, and like Garp, he has no interest in power and status. However, he is very powerful and obsessed with Jun. After Jun was transferred to G-5, Cake also wanted to be transferred there, but Jun refused, and Marshal Sengoku also rejected him. But Cake didn't give up. Over the years, Kuzan couldn't even remember how many times Cake had confessed his love to Jun. But I never expected that the Navy would choose Orgrim in the end. As a licking dog who had been unable to lick for many years, Jiaji had a mental collapse and jumped directly from the building. Thinking of this, it's not like Kuzan can't understand. Don't you feel a little sorry for him? After Kuzan thought about it, he couldn't help but ask. Jun first exhaled a puff of smoke, then looked a little surprised and strange, and asked, "Why am I sorry for him?" He likes you, Kuzan didn't know what to say either. Don't give me any moral hijacking here. He likes me, it's his right, and I also have the right to reject him. He has confessed his love to me so many times, but how many times have I not rejected him outright? Just because he likes me doesn't mean I have to like him, right? How can this be true in the world? I just chose and frankly admitted that I liked Orgrim. In this case, he was going to jump off the building. What did I do wrong? And sorry for him, Jun said carelessly. What you said makes so much sense, I'm speechless, Kuzan said in confusion. Smoker also said at this time, the elder sister is right. After a short pause, Smoker said again, but, eldest sister, I hope you can distinguish these things clearly. Kid, are you teaching me how to do things? Jun raised his body back and hit Smoker's stomach with the back of his head, interrupting his words. I haven't figured it out yet. Why don't you show me the way? Jun teased Smoker again, and then said in a serious tone, okay, let's stop talking about old times here. Kuzan, how is the project here? Kuzan saw that Jun's tone changed and he got down to the topic. He didn't dwell on anything anymore. His expression didn't change, but his tone became much more serious. He said, it will be fully completed within 3 months at the latest. All departments and offices will be completed. The deployed military personnel are ready to move in. Yeah? That's almost it? The Marshal's intention is to move the New World Plan to the next stage in 3 months. Jun nodded. Kuzan asked again, G-3 who will it be given to? According to the new regulations, the headquarters will enter a new world, so the base commander of G-3 will be a lieutenant general of the headquarters, and he will continue to hold the rank of Lieutenant General of the headquarters. Jun said this first, then paused for a moment and said Sakazuki won this job. You are not in the headquarters, and I don't have any direct subordinates of the Lieutenant General in the headquarters. After all, I am still a Lieutenant General now. Poor Salino didn't like to get involved in these messy things, so Sakazuki got this with almost no pressure. Sakazuki? He is really decisive. Has he already started to take action? Kyuzan murmured softly. After all, he may not take you seriously, but I am not someone who is easy to deal with like you, Jun said with a grin. Kyuzan rolled his eyes at Jun, but didn't refute anything. After all, Jun was not mocking him, but just teasing him for not being firm enough in his fight against Sakazuki. Kyuzan, I also know my own faults and am not afraid of others telling me. So, who will be the base director of G-3? Kyuzan finally asked. Sakazuki's latest confidant, Ghost Bamboo Virgo, Jun said softly. Virgo? He was quite good, but alas, I ended up following Sakazuki. Kyuzan obviously knows Virgo quite well. Well, that's true, but although it's a bit surprising, it's not surprising. After all, Virgo is kind to his own people, but he's not nice to pirates. Just like Sakazuki and the other hawks, there were almost no survivors left. Jun also nodded. _Filu reminds you, 3 things about reading: hide, recommend, and share. Support Filu's novels, b.faloo.com original works, all.